Our final speaker for the evening, the man who has the last word, so to say, is our headmaster, Mr. Tony Reela. And I found it quite hard to come up with an introduction for the man because I believe he needs none. But I'll give it a try. I'm worried I might get berated at work if I don't. Mr. Reela is in his 8th year with us here at the school, and I can tell you personally, in my 3 short years as a teacher at Pretoria Boys High, just looking from the ground up, not anyone can run the school. It takes a very, very special person to be headmaster. So it is with great appreciation that I ask Mr. Tony Reela to come and address us this evening.
I offered James, I said to him, if I cut out my speech, we can all go watch rugby and we're done. He said that's quite a difficult decision for him to make. But thank you very much for the kind introduction, James. I really appreciate it. There are a couple of things that always please me at an evening like this. And the one is when the head boy speaks. And Carl, I was very proud of you tonight. I remain very proud of you as a head boy. And well done. The other thing, before I share a few words that I have to share with you today, is just to say thank you to Patrick for his words, which I found quite staggering. It's one of those addresses that I think we're going to mull over for a couple of days, even weeks, just to think of the enormity of what he did and what other human beings do in trying to attempt this thing that we all call the Everest. We use the analogy of Everest for so many things that are unreachable. And this was just quite remarkable to hear in quite a matter-of-fact kind of sort of demeanor the story of Everest, and it was really remarkable. So Patrick, thank you very much for that as well. Gentlemen, thank you once again for inviting me to your annual dinner. This is the 99th dinner. I think it's a very special one, and as has been said before, at the centenary dinner next year, I urge you all to be there and to invite as many of your friends as possible. This is, as James said, the 8th dinner that I've attended as a headmaster, and finally I feel comfortable, having been in my 8th year, that I've been at Boys High for longer than any of you were. There are a few old boys I've met along the way that I had to wait until now to say that. There have been some quite remarkable times in these past 8 years, some of the most rewarding times in my professional career, coupled with some of the toughest moments that I've had to deal with, and some very significant achievements in our history, and I thank you all as the Old Boys community for your support along the way. And at the outset of this address, I would like to extend my congratulations to Jason for his election as chairman of the association, and I wish him well for his term of office, and I promise him our support as a school. As is customary, there's a brief overview of matters at the school. The academic results of the class of 2017 were not as good as previous years in terms of pass rate and bachelor rate, with a 99% pass rate and 87% bachelor rate, which was slightly down from the previous year, but still amongst the top schools in South Africa, particularly those matriculating 300 pupils a year. And one must always remember that we are matriculating 300 pupils a year, and there are many schools that use percentages as a means of their success. And if you're talking about 100% of a class of 100 and 100% of a class of 300, those are very different numbers indeed. And in terms of the bachelor rate of 87%, just to put it in perspective, the Gauteng provincial bachelor rate was 38% and the national rate was 29%. And so a Boys High rate of 87% actually looks quite favorable compared with those. The number of distinctions rose, and we had the highest number we've had for a while, and I was delighted with the performance of the top end of our academic spectrum. The extracurricular program continues to work well. There's some various sporting and cultural pursuits offering opportunity to so many boys. And the performance of our boys stagger me sometimes when we continue to hold dear to our ethos and ideals when it comes down to why we do what we do. We also staged our first Gilbert and Sullivan performance in a decade, and it went down very well indeed, with with the Pirates of Penzance having finishing its run last week. There was much debate in our school community about the relevance of this production, but that we felt it was okay to do a frivolous and light-hearted and enjoyable production that involves so many boys every now and then. The estate is looking good. The new buildings are in their second full year of occupancy. The loan is almost completely repaid. As many of you know, we had to take out a loan of 14 million rand to continue the second phase of the building. And at the end of 2020 will be our final payment that we will make, and the loan would have been fully repaid from a combination of donations from individuals, a differentiated fee that's being charged to Form 1 and Form 2 parents, donations from the Praetorian Trust and the Parents Association. And this is something I will breathe a huge sigh of relief when that final payment is made. And it's only through the support of our parents and the excellent financial administration of our school by our staff and the governing body that has allowed us as a school to be so financially strong. There's been careful management of funds received, good collection processes, and a far improved procurement process that has allowed us to be in this excellent financial situation that we're currently in. And shrewd and prudent foresight has allowed us to not only cover day-to-day expenses, but we've made provision as well as a school for future expenses, particularly those of significant value. And those of you who are hockey players will know that in 2009, the AstroTurf was relayed for the second time, and an AstroTurf has a lifespan of between 8 and 10 years, and our surface is due to be relayed in 2019 at a cost in excess of 3 million rand. We have made provision for this, and we have set aside funds for this to be able to cover the cost without having to rely on donations or to dip into reserves. We've also been able to institute a water-saving project that will allow us to switch off our dependence on municipal supply by 100% utilization of borehole water, which is of such a quality, and I'm delighted that we made reference to that earlier, the tap on Brooks Field, which is allegedly linked directly to the borehole. It's not, but it allegedly is. That tap, and so all our water supplies will be 100% borehole water, which is of a quality that's high enough for full human consumption and usage. The other thing we're looking at the moment is also the use of solar energy as cost saving, but we're battling to find a cost-effective solution with a reasonable payback period. My focus at the school these past 8 years was initially on financial systems and management, then onto the building projects and estate, and more recently in the last couple of years, looking at institutional practices that were outdated, irrelevant, and considered offensive to some, as we look to make our school one that could be considered truly South African. This is a never-ending process, and one whose importance must never be underestimated. Every single boy who comes to Boys High must see not only the history of the school and from whence it came, but he must also be able to see something of himself. He must see role models that he can identify with, he must have experiences that he connects with, and he must also feel a sense of belonging that is so important to each one of us. And so to the future. In a few months' time, we'll be rolling out our plans for the upcoming years. Plans we hope will not only sustain our school, but more importantly, allow access to our school for deserving boys. We've become worried that the current cost of educating a boy at Boys High, which is approximately 50,000 rand for a day scholar and 100,000 rand for a boarder, that cost we're putting ourselves out of reach of the common man who has been the backbone of Boys High for almost 120 years. This common man could be the child of a policeman, the child of a laborer, a teacher, a nurse, and many other traditionally lower income families, and this child must be allowed access to our school if they're talented, deserving, and if they have a skill that we can help them develop over time. And to this end, we are launching a rather ambitious bursary scheme for those with talent but without income. This talent could be academic, musical, sporting, or leadership, and character, but there must be financial need. And the number we're looking to achieve is a group of 150 boys, which will be phased in over a period of 5 years, of approximately 30 boys per year, or roughly 10% of the year group. These 30 will most likely need to be boarders in order for them to alleviate transport issues and to experience the full value of the school. And if you do some simple mathematics of that, at 100,000 per year, that represents an investment of 3 million rand in the first year, going up to 6 million and reaching 15 million in today's money by the time we're in full swing. This is a massive, massive target, but it's one that we're determined to try and reach. The Praetorian Trust will have a pivotal role to play in this target, and so will old boys and corporate structures that want to make a real difference in the lives of the South African youth. I've been blown away by the generosity of old boys, many of you who have faithfully heeded the call to assist. And your 100 Rand donation on a monthly basis is as important to me as the bigger ones from those who can afford more. This bursary scheme will be consuming my energy in the next few years, both locally and internationally. As was said earlier, I'm going to Australia in the next month to attend a conference, and that conference is of an organization called the IBSC, the International Boys Schools Coalition, which is a group of boys' schools from around the world, roughly 300 boys' schools from places such as the UK, the US, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. And there's a very strong boys' school contingency in South Africa, both state and independent boys' schools. And one of the advantages of going to a conference like this is that we can see and we can benchmark ourselves not only against South African schools but also against international schools as far as boys' schools, boys' education is concerned. So I'll be attending then. I'm also going to use it as an opportunity to speak to old boys in Sydney, in Melbourne, and in Brisbane. Next year, I hope to visit the USA on the same conference. There's an annual conference of the IBSC, and I'm hoping to couple that with a visit to Old Boys, and the year after to Europe and the United Kingdom in an attempt to reach as many people as possible. So when you do receive news of this project, I ask you please to read it carefully and with an open mind and an open heart. And if you're able to contribute towards this bursary scheme, I would appreciate it. That said, that's a little bit of news of the school and where we're going, and I use this opportunity as a moment just to share a few thoughts, and these are two final thoughts that I've had in the last few weeks that I wanted to share with you today. They both come from a post that was shared with me by a friend who's also an old boy, and he shared on Facebook Andre Agassi's acceptance speech when he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, the Tennis Hall of Fame in 2011. Agassi gave great credit to those around him, but there was one encounter that he described was when he met Nelson Mandela. And Agassi said something that resonated with me, particularly considering the times that we live in at the moment. And I quote from Agassi's speech, "One of the most influential people in my life I met only one time. It was the most vulnerable time, a time that I needed direction and inspiration. And just then, there I was shaking hands with Nelson Mandela. He took my hand, complimented my game, and in the same breath told me the reason why we've been put here on earth. I can still close my eyes and hear his words of wisdom from that evening. He said, 'We must be careful in our decisions, careful in our words, and we must be careful in our relationships. Andre, we must live our life carefully.'" And I thought these are very interesting words that a man shared with him in 2011, and they're words that perhaps we could use in our South African context today. I think there are too many times when we open our mouths and we're not very careful with what we say, particularly in front of the young children that are looking to us all for an example. And so my closing comments to you come from that same speech, because there were two things that stood out for me. The one was that this exhortation to live your life carefully. But the second one was, it resonated with me because this is why I do what I do. And my job, and the job of teachers, and the job of parents, and the job of you, is to try and empower our youth. And the word empower is such a funny one, it means so many things. But to try and inspire is possibly a better word. To inspire our youth to reach whatever it is that they need to reach. And Agassi's closing comment resonated with me as a teacher and as a school principal working at this wonderful school of ours that has young men in it with shining eyes and big dreams. And Agassi said, at the beginning of my journey, my friend Gil said to me, Andre, you have dreams and I have strong shoulders. So stand on my shoulders and reach. And so to my children, all of my children, stand on our shoulders, reach higher than we could, reach for your dreams, because today, standing here receiving this honor, I am living proof that no dream, no journey is impossible. And so, as I said to you, our job as parents and as teachers is to inspire others. It's as simple as that. And if we can provide the shoulders upon which our young children can climb to reach their dreams, then the future will be most bright for all of us. Thank you.